the complete secret behind WWE wrestling moves and finishes. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Also check out our new videos on Wrestlelamia XL. The kick. A standard kick is a fundamental part of any wrestling match. A kick to the midsection is used to set up a range of moves, and there is a blatant and sometimes obvious secret behind a standard kick. The wrestler delivering the move should make little to no contact with their opponent. However, the kick has to look real, so it's important that the wrestler lands their foot as close to the wrestler's body as possible without harming them. The punch. The punch is one of the first moves that is taught in pro wrestling schools across the world. New trainees are encouraged to use a Hollywood acting style of punching, so it looks like they are legitimately punching their opponent, but in reality, they're never making any hard contact at all. Some wrestlers opt to slap their leg to add emphasis to the punch, yet this often receives criticism. Certain wrestlers such as Gunther and Sheamus like to make contact with their punches, but this doesn't mean that the wrestler who opt for this style are making full-blown contact. They usually make light contact and adding emphasis through mannerisms and their impressive selling. Body slam. The body slam is all about cooperation. For the move to work, both the wrestler and their opponent must work together. The wrestler taking the move usually makes themselves light by planting their hand on their opponent's leg. This allows the wrestler to lift them with ease, and the wrestler can then usually slam them safely. This is how smaller wrestlers are able to body slam larger than life opponents, as the hard work is mostly on the opponent to set up the move and make it work. The clothesline. The clothesline has been a wrestling staple for decades, and the move has become so popular that certain wrestlers have even opted to use the move as a finisher. For the move to work, contact must be made, and this contact is always made on the chest region. Under no circumstances must any contact be made to the neck or face area, as this is not the intention behind the move and it could lead to serious injury. The suplex. Similarly to the body slam, the suplex is about cooperation. The wrestler taking the suplex will usually plant their hand on their opponent's waist, and when the time is right, they are then able to flip themselves over with ease. Just like the body slam, this is how wrestlers perform the move on significantly bigger wrestlers. The chop. Some wrestlers like to pride themselves on delivering stiff chop, and the traditional chop has been a common move used in most wrestling matches across North America for decades. The chop doesn't necessarily have a big secret behind it, other than the contact must be made on the chest area and the throat area must be avoided at all costs. Whilst the move can lead to temporary bruising or even sometimes impacted chest, the move is considered relatively safe for the most part. The splash. The splash is always an impressive move. When a wrestler leaps into the sky and comes down with all their weight on their opponent, it's usually a sign that the match is about to end. The move has an obvious secret, and of course, the wrestler isn't coming down with all their weight. If the wrestler is a heavier wrestler, for instance Mark Henry or Big Show, they will usually deliver the move in such a way where their knees and arms take all the force. Smaller wrestlers can sometimes make contact when delivering the move, as the risk of injury is limited, and it can often expose the move if they fail to make contact. The super kick. Over the past 2 decades, the super kick has become one of the most popular moves in wrestling, or maybe one of the most overused moves in wrestling. At one time the move was reserved for being a finisher, but now seemingly every wrestler on the planet uses a move. But for the move to look good, it usually counts on the wrestler delivering the move connecting as close to the wrestler's face as possible without making actual contact, of course. It's then down to the opponent to sell the move like they've been legitimately kicked in the face. A thigh slap is usually included in the delivery of the move, yet in recent years, vast criticism has led to certain wrestlers abandoning this element of the move. Some wrestlers like to make as little contact with the move, but this should only be reserved for those top elite talent who know what they're doing in the squared circle. If contact is made, the person taking the move will likely put their hands up at the very last second. This method usually looks the best on TV, as of course the move is actually landing. The big boot. The big boot is a move often used for tall wrestlers, and it's a move that is rather underused in modern wrestling. The secret behind the move is similar to the super kick, as no contact should be made, but it's common for wrestlers taking the move to slow down at the last second and then turn their head into the stationary foot so the move looks as good as possible. The sleeper hold. A common fixture in most old school wrestling matches is the sleeper hold. The move at one time was incredibly protected, yet in modern wrestling it's just a standard rest hold. The wrestler delivering the move applies little pressure when executing the hold, which of course makes sense, as the wrestler taking the move may legitimately pass out if the move was done for real. The chokeslam. The secret behind the trademark chokeslam is rather simple. The wrestler taking the move will usually jump and will sometimes even use their opponent's shoulders to prop them up. the wrestler delivering the move will not put any pressure on their opponent's neck, and similarly to other moves on this list, it's all about safe corroboration. The spear. There have been numerous variations of the spear throughout wrestling history. The safest way to deliver the move is by having the wrestler delivering the move safely, bringing their opponent to the mat, similarly to a rugby tackle of sorts. Another way is that a wrestler can put a ton of force into the move, and although it's just a shoulder in the gut, it can be extremely painful. The wrestler taking the move is always going to take a back bump, so if a wrestler can deliver a strong back bump and knows how to sell, the move is usually going to look incredibly impressive no matter what. The elbow drop. The triceps is the key muscle involved in the elbow drop. It's vital that the wrestler doesn't use the point of his elbow to deliver the move, as this would be extremely painful for the opponent. The wrestler should land with their triceps on their opponent's chest region, but it's up to the wrestlers themselves how much force they use for the move, as some like to jump into the move. For the move to look good, it must be sold with conviction. So if the wrestler just lies there and acts like the move was just a slight inconvenience, the mystique surrounding the move is gone immediately. The Neckbreaker. The Neckbreaker can be a move that can look devastating on television, especially as wrestlers sometimes land in awkward positions. A traditional neckbreaker usually sees a wrestler delivering the move take a seat or a back bump, and they will 99% of the time loosely keep hold of the wrestler's chin as opposed to the neck, so this in turn will safely guide them down to the mat. When it comes to other versions of the move such as a swinging neckbreaker, little pressure should be applied to the chin and neck area of the opponent, and the opponent should be fully prepared and know what style of bump to take when the move is about to be executed. The DDT. For the DDT to look as good as possible, the wrestler delivering the move must only apply a tiny amount of pressure when applying the initial front face lock. The wrestler delivering the move will then take a back bump, and as the wrestler falls backwards, the opponent will take a standard face bump, which is a style of bump that is used numerous times throughout a typical pro wrestling match. The atomic drop. The atomic drop is often bashed for looking fake, and the reason for this is that the move is extremely hard to make look real. The move sees a wrestler getting lifted with their legs wide open and planted on their opponent's knee. Of course, the secret is the wrestler isn't making any contact with the knee, and this is how they avoid a rather humiliating pain. The powerbomb. The powerbomb is a visually impressive move, but it takes years of practice to master. The wrestlers taking the move must plant their hands on their opponent's legs before being elevated up. This will make them lighter, and it will avoid them being dropped right on their head. The wrestler will then lift their opponent with their hands locked in like a seatbelt of sorts, and once the opponent is safely in the air, they will then finally release them, and the opponent will take a standard back bump. The cutter. The cutter has taken on many names, including the diamond cutter and even the RKO. The way the move is done varies on the variation, but it always involves the opponent taking a front face bump right onto the mat. DDP's version of the move tended to hold onto the opponent's head, while Randy Orton's iconic variation tends to give his opponent more freedom to spread their body for the impending bump. The armbar. Like most submission moves, the armbar is kept safe thanks to a lack of pressure and cooperation. Pro wrestling is in the UFC, so this means that no pressure should be applied to the submission-based moves such as armbars, and the onus is on the opponent to sell the submission move as if they're in total agony. The Piledriver. The Piledriver is one of the most infamous moves in pro wrestling history, and as things stand, the standard Piledriver is currently banned in WWE. The move is seen as dangerous by many, as numerous wrestlers have gotten hurt with the move over the years, and the move should only be done by those wrestlers who know how to properly deliver it. If the move is done safely, then the wrestler delivering the move should land on their backside, whilst the opponent's head shouldn't in theory touch the mat at all, and any force or pressure should come down on the opponent's shoulders thanks in part to the cushion of the fellow wrestler's thighs. The German Suplex. The German Suplex often looks devastating, and it usually looks like wrestlers are legitimately landing on their head. It's vital that the wrestlers tuck their chin upon their landing, and it's important that the wrestler taking the move bounces upwards. By going up, the pulling motion from the wrestler giving the move should result in that wrestler landing on their high back and shoulder region, which is undoubtedly the safest way to take this move. The leg drop. There are two ways of delivering a leg drop. The wrestler can land without making any contact with the opponent. This is sometimes hard to do, but it's possible if the leg lands in a bent manner. This often looks awkward, so wrestlers will usually aim for contact on the chest while trying to keep a somewhat bent leg in order to inflict as little pain as humanly possible. In relation to the pain, this is often felt by the wrestlers delivering the move, as names such as Hulk Hogan, The Undertaker and Matt Hardy have all talked about how much pain they've encountered in their lives by using a leg drop as a primary move. The Pedigree. The Pedigree is one of the most iconic moves of all time, and Triple H has offered some unique variations of the finishing move. Initially, the game liked to keep a hold of the wrestler's arms when planting the move, but this limited the motion of the opponent and it was seen as somewhat dangerous. The more modern version of the move sees Triple H let go of the arms, and this allows the wrestler to take a front face bump. Some wrestlers such as Kane opt to take the move on their knees, and whilst this is fine, it often looks awkward and can cause significant damage if the move is taken in this manner over a long period. The RKO. In terms of modern day finishing moves, the RKO is surely up there with the most famous. The RKO is well known outside of the wrestling bubble, and the move has been synonymous with the legendary Randy Orton. The secret behind the move is incredibly simple, as the wrestler taking the move simply takes a front face bump. Orton's RKO, unlike other cutters, gives the opponent a ton of free reign to take the bump, and this can result in a fantastic bump which in turn elevates the legitimacy of the finisher. The Tombstone. The Tombstone Piledriver was The Undertaker's primary finisher for 30 years, and he was one of the few wrestlers in the company allowed to use the move. Upon looking at the move, the secret is simple. The wrestler's head should never touch the mat. The Undertaker mastered the finisher over the years, and even though it was an urban legend that he once hurt Hulk Hogan with the move, this was debunked, and The Undertaker is widely considered to be one of the safest pro wrestlers in WWE history. The Stunner. Stone Cold Steve Austin made a name for himself by stunning everyone left, right and center. For the move to work safely though, Austin would have to deliver a kick to the midsection, which rarely made contact, and if it did, it would be the lightest kick imaginable. Austin would then grab his opponent's head in an RKO style position and then drop his backside like he was delivering a leg drop. In terms of the wrestler taking the move, they are sometimes making contact with Austin's arm or shoulder on the way down, but this is never significant enough to cause any pain at all. The onus is on the opponent to sell the move like crazy, and this has been part of the reason as to why the move became so popular thanks to incredible sells from the names of The Rock and Scott Hall. The AA. John Cena's AA won him countless world titles, and the move is relatively safe and easy to deliver. When Cena flips his opponent over, the wrestler taking the move simply performs a standard back bump. If a wrestler is then able to deliver a safe back bump, then the move is extremely difficult to mess up. The F5. Whilst the F5 looks completely devastating as a finishing move, thanks in part to Brock Lesnar delivering it, the move is actually incredibly safe, and even non-wrestling talents such as Michael Cole have been able to take the move without being hurt or injured. When Lesnar spins the wrestler, he lands with them and basically guides them all the way down to the mat. The way Lesnar spins them means that the wrestler is 99% of the time going to perform a standard front face bump. Some wrestlers such as the Big Show have taken the move on their back, and whilst this is a perfectly acceptable way to take the move, it can often look weird to the audience. The GTS. The burden is on the opponent to make the GTS look great. The opponent will usually plant their hands on Punk's shoulder. This then helps them hoist themselves over Punk's head. Once over Punk's head, sometimes the wrestler will decide to make light contact with Punk's knee, but more often than not, there is virtually zero contact with the knee. Whilst this sounds simple, this has caused problems in the past, and Punk has accidentally busted open fellow WWE stars with the trademark move, the Styles Clash. It's always a wrestler's instinct to tuck their chin. However, when it comes to the Styles Clash, this is going to result in serious injury, as the wrestler will land right on their head. If the wrestler doesn't tuck their chin in, the move is incredibly safe to take, as they are in essence just delivering a front face bump to the canvas. The Swanton Bomb. Jeff Hardy's always admitted that the Swanton Bomb hurts both him and his opponent. It can hurt or not hurt the opponent in different situations. It all depends on Hardy's positioning during the move. Sometimes he may make full contact with his body landing right on the opponent's front, or at times it can simply brush the back of his head with Hardy taking most of the impact. Now one thing's important, as while the wrestler taking the move can avoid injury by bringing their arms into their waist region, keeping them at their side could easily result in a broken arm. The Sweet Chin Music. The Sweet Chin Music was one of the most protected moves in WWE history. Unfortunately, over the years, the move has become a staple of matches, and the super kick is nothing more than a basic fundamental move such as a punch or a standard chop. The Sweet Chin Music rarely makes actual contact with the face, and HBK mastered this. If the contact was made with the chin area, then HBK was able to deliver this in such a way where he wasn't putting a ton of force into the finisher. Some wrestlers opted to put their arms up for the move, and this would allow HBK to fully connect with the iconic finisher, the Frog Splash. Just like other top rope moves, the Frog Splash is usually going to hurt no matter what. According to former WWE star Maven, the move is one of the most painful to take, and even received a concussion from the move. A wrestler delivering the move can try to take most of the impact on their knees and elbows, but more often than not, the wrestler taking the move is going to take some impact. Numerous injuries have occurred from this exact finishing move, and whilst it's still insanely popular in modern wrestling, it should only be used by those wrestlers who know how to deliver it without injuring their opponent. The Atomic Leg Drop. Hulk Hogan defeated endless names with the big leg drop. Hogan would usually try to somewhat bend his leg upon executing the move. This meant that his opponent avoided most of the impact. In terms of where the move was designed to land, this was always on the opponent's chest region, and the move had to be angled just right, as the throat is of course in close proximity to the chest, and this area has to be avoided at all costs. The Crossroads. Cody Rhodes' Crossroads won him the main event of WrestleMania 40, and whilst this move may look complex, it's one of the easiest finishes to take in WWE. The secret to the move is that the opponent is taking a front face bump once they have been rotated over, whilst the wrestler giving the move, that being Rhodes, is just taking a standard back bump. It's hard for the move to go wrong, and the move can be performed on anyone of any size with relative ease. End of Days. The End of Days is in essence a reverse hanging STO. Baron Corbin will usually swing his opponent, and the opponent will post and cooperate before the swing, making them lighter. The wrestler taking the move will then take a standard front face bump, whilst Corbin falls to his back. All these actions sped up result in one of the most visually pleasing moves in WWE, and it's hardly a surprise that the finishing move has become a fan favourite over the past decade. The Widow's Peak. When debuting a finisher in WWE, it's vital that it receives a strong positive reception. This was most definitely the case for Victoria. When Victoria debuted her Widow's Peak finishing move during the Ruthless Aggression era, it received an audible gasp from the live crowd, as it legitimately looked like Victoria had broken her opponent's neck. Whilst the move always looks insanely good, the secret behind the move was that the opponent would just take an elevated bump to their knees. The only part of their body that is going to suffer any pain is in their knees, and there is little impact inflicted on the neck area, as of course, Victoria isn't actually snapping people's neck with a legendary finisher. The Bonsai Drop. The Bonsai Drop often looked like it hurt, and sometimes this was unfortunately the case. Yokozuna was prone to delivering the move with excessive force on certain enhancement talents, but when it came to wrestlers he actually liked, the move would be safe thanks to the former WWE champion landing on his feet upon landing, then gradually and delicately sitting on the opponent's chest. The Coup de Grace. Whenever Finn Balor delivers a coup de grace, it's his job to try and absorb much of the impact as possible. Balor will often crumple up when he lands, and this spreads the force out as opposed to spiking straight down on the opponent. Also, the opponent will normally cross their arms, and Balor will land on their arms instead of their stomach, which would be much less painful. The Last Ride. During The Undertaker's days as the American Badass, he decided to introduce the world to the Last Ride. The Last Ride was basically an elevated powerbomb, and this element of elevation made the Undertaker's version of the popular move stand out. The move works in virtually the same way as a standard powerbomb. The opponent will post their hands on the Undertaker's leg and knee area, and when the Undertaker brings them upwards, he plants them down to the mat, with the opponent taking a traditional back bump. The Undertaker's elevation part surprisingly makes the move safer, as this sees the Undertaker guide the wrestler to the mat, and although they're taking the bump from an increased height, the extra support is always there, so the risk of injury is quite minimal. Clothesline from Hell. JBL's finisher was known as the Clothesline from Hell, and JBL arguably had one of the greatest clotheslines in wrestling history. Whilst JBL's version always looked brutal, it was safe just like every other clothesline. The secret behind the move is that JBL would make contact with the wrestler's chest region, and the neck area should always be avoided, and due to JBL and other wrestlers who deliver the move making contact with the chest, they can put a ton of force and impact into the delivery. The Curb Stomp. The success and legitimacy of Seth Rollins' Curb Stomp is mostly down to the opponent, who must sell the stomp convincingly. Rollins will only apply a little pressure with his foot, and the wrestler taking the move will bump with their hands down to the mat. This in turn protects their face and avoids them being injured. Some wrestlers take the bump by spiking their head into the mat, but this should only be done if the wrestler knows how to deliver this style of bump safely, a la Ricochet. The Superman Punch. A Roman Reigns' Superman Punch in WWE is definitely a move that showcases his athleticism and strength. The move looks incredibly impactful, but there is a clear secret behind it, and that is that Reigns doesn't even clench his fist properly. The fist is left loose, and most of it isn't even made with the opponent's face. The other secret is the camera angle, as the angle is vital in not exposing the move completely. But there you have it folks, the hidden secrets behind wrestling moves and finishes. Be sure to leave your comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.